Apologies, Lascan Corla. Unfortunately, as a Dublin TD, I had to go home to deal with family issues, and I was attempting to stick to the schedule, so it's not really fair either. And we talk about this job not being very family friendly, but it's not very fair to be able to...
Deputy, if we could deal with the topical issue, please, and the other matters can be dealt with at a business committee. So you have 4 minutes in relation to the topical. Thank you.
So what I wish to raise the topical issue is the issue of support for parents whose children who are engaged with TUSLA for child protection concerns and whose children are in care. The reality is that this is a group of parents who often are often quite stigmatised and receive very little support. TUSLA will do their best to support a family to prevent a child coming into care. But once a child comes into care, the child becomes the centre. We are told the children's welfare should be paramount, and the child becomes the centre, and the parents are frequently left behind. And this has several problems. First of all, it undermines the parents' fundamental rights. We've seen in a recent study from UCC looking at the use of voluntary care agreements, how parents can be left confused, bewildered, unsupported. And this ultimately undermines the free and informed consent required for a voluntary care agreement and their own fundamental rights. Furthermore, then, when a child comes into care, this is a horrendous process. It's often a necessary process, yes, but it is a process that engenders huge amounts of loss and anger and grief and bereavement, all of which is totally understandable. But my experience has been that parents are left sitting with those feelings, and they're not given supports for those things. And they are left, and this creates hostility between them and the social workers, which makes the social workers' jobs harder, which puts more stress on them. And ultimately, the children lose out because parents are less able to engage with access. They're less able to engage with reunification. They're less able to engage meaningfully with the social work department. And ultimately, this is about children's rights, and by providing these supports we can actually meet children's rights better, because a parent that is supported to engage with the signs of safety and the family safety plan, with reunification, with access, a parent who is able to process that loss and that grief so the child does not get caught in the crossfire between a suffering parent and the social workers, and access becomes a front in the battle, ultimately supports those children. Now look, there are some local support projects doing this. I look at Clare Care, who provide excellent and wide-ranging support, but we need something at a national level. And I know this works for 2 reasons. One, all you have to do is look at Clare Care and the work they do. But also, let's look at EPIC. EPIC support young people in care. They are an independent advocacy service for young people in care who could do so much more with proper resourcing. But they support parents, they support young people with a care history, some of whom are parents, whose children are being taken into care. I worked as a social worker taking a child into care from a parent who had a care history herself, and she had an advocate from EPIC. And that was a significant benefit. Now, look, the case wasn't easy. It still had its difficulties. But we had someone there who could help the parent engage in the process, who could provide supports, counselling supports for them, who could link them in further with other supports, who could help them engage meaningfully with us in the social work department to A, make the process less traumatic, and B, help them engage in access after the fact, so that even though their child was in care, the trauma didn't have to continue, and they ultimately had a more stable placement, supporting the rights of the child and supporting the child in care. This is a much needed service, and again there have been ad hoc attempts within TUSLA and the HSE over the years, often which have been met with not outright hostility, but certainly a slowness or a reluctance, because the focus has been on the child, and it is time we looked at the child in the context of his family, even if that child is in care. Thank you.
Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Lascan Corla, and I just want to express my appreciation to Deputy Costello. I know I'd asked for this question. He'd proposed this topical a while ago, and he facilitated me by moving it to today, so thank him for that. And look, I think it's a really important issue that he's brought our attention to this evening, and as we know, there are approximately 6,000 children in care in the state. Of those, the very large proportion, 93%, are in foster care, and a small number live in residential care. And the vast majority of children in care need to stay in contact with their parents, with their siblings, and with their extended family. And we know that good relationships between parents, children and carers brings and results in the best outcomes for children in care. And placing a child in care away from their birth family is a serious decision, and it's only made after extensive social work, intervention, assessment and consideration. When a decision is reached that a child needs to come into care, it's preferable if this can be done with the consent or the agreement of the child's parents. And such an agreement enables the parent or the parents and the social worker to work more effectively to address difficulties within the family, which led to the need for alternative care, and to work towards the safe return of the child to the care of the parent or parents. Sometimes it's not possible or feasible for such an agreement to be reached, and in those circumstances, TUSLA will apply to the courts for a care order. It is more common for children to enter care with a voluntary agreement of their parents, and where the child's care plan identifies that a child should stay in care for a longer period, best practice is that TUSLA applies to the courts for a care order. And obviously I know Deputy Costello is well familiar from his professional background with all of these processes. And providing a positive experience to children in alternative care is a key aim of the Irish care system, and central to this is the provision of secure and stable placements. And I know that data collected by TUSLA indicates that a very small proportion of children in care have 3 or more placements within a year. That was 2% in 2019, which is indicative generally of good overall placement stability within the care system. Data also shows that at year end, the proportion of children in care who are on a care order is higher than when children are admitted to care. At the end of 2019, almost 3/4 of the children in care were on a care order. And this may mean that children are staying in care longer, and as a consequence, their status has moved from a voluntary agreement to a legal order. And this is also indicative of good placement stability. Throughout lockdown, my department has heard from many parents about their views on contact with their children over that particularly difficult time. And TUSLA has issued guidance for parents, for carers, for staff and children on how to best manage visits, how to stay in touch. And the CEO of TUSLA emphasised that face-to-face visits were happening, if at all possible, even during the most stringent elements of lockdown. And as we come out of COVID, I know my department and TUSLA, we want to learn from that experience, and we do want to hear the experiences of parents throughout the COVID crisis and their ability to continue to engage, to continue to have those familial relations with their children. And I know that Bernard Gloucester has met with the Children's Rights Alliance on the issue of supporting parents whose children are in care, and there are plans for scoping for potential services for parents affected by this issue. So look, that's in the early stage, but I think there is a clear plan in TUSLA to look at what supports can be provided for parents. And I know officials from my department have met with representatives of an existing service who've worked with parents of children in care over many years, and this organisation also produced supportive guides for parents during lockdown, and it's hopes that initiatives like these can be developed to initially addressing local need, but that they could also be scaled nationally as well. And I'll certainly look into the particular service, Clare Care, that Deputy Costello spoke on, and I'm happy to continue to engage with him to see how we can take the research and develop it further.
Thank you. Deputy Patrick Costello to reply.
On the issue of voluntary care agreements, as I said, there's been a recent study out of UCC highlighting some of the contentious issues and outlining options for reform. So I think it would be very useful if your department could engage with, if they haven't already, with the team in UCC who've been conducting this research and, as I say, suggesting these reforms, because I think that could be very useful going forward. I've also sent you your office some information, because again, these kind of services, these independent advocacy services, are incredibly important and are quite commonplace in other jurisdictions. We do have them here, and they do occasionally provide support for parents who are in care, but it's more an ad hoc basis if they happen to be part of that advocacy service already. So there is some information there, and I'm happy to engage with you again, Minister. And I appreciate that you're not in a position where you can micromanage Bernard Gloucester and the operational issues of TUSLA, but you are in a position to show leadership and to, provide leadership and influence to TUSLA. And I think your strong support for the rights of parents, and by supporting the rights of parents and supporting parents in their journey through their children being in care, as much as supporting their children in care, that we do ultimately support the rights of children. Because quite frequently, as I say, children are left with a conflict of loyalty between this safe placement that they now have, that TUSLA is providing them as home to allow them to grow up safe, and the family of origin that they have left, that they are still deeply connected to. And anything that can support that connection while maintaining that safety ultimately supports children's rights. So it's parents' rights and children's rights, and we need to lead strongly on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. To conclude.
Thanks very much. Well, I suppose on the issue of alternative care and the wider care system, as the Deputy knows, there's been a long-going review of the Childcare Act 1991. We're hoping to bring proposals for a significant amendment of that legislation in the near future. I look forward to working with the Deputy and other deputies on the Children's Joint Oireachtas Committee. There's a lot of work there, and I think we can significantly reform the law in that area. In terms of voluntary groups and representative groups that support children in the care process, I'm well aware. I met with EPIC early in my tenure as Minister and was very impressed by their commitment to children and young people in care, but also, I suppose, the very structured way in which they seek to advocate for children. I absolutely take on board what the Deputy is saying in terms of the importance of parents having a voice in this process. And as I say, I'm happy to engage with him further in terms of understanding what that voice would look like, how it could be best amplified in terms of maybe directly representing parents in particular situations, and on a wider level influencing policy. The Deputy is absolutely right in terms of that conflict that some children who are in care may experience for a while. The stresses and strains of time spent in care should be made as easy as possible, and for the child, but also for the parent of that child. So look, we'll definitely look and see what we can do in that line. I'll continue to engage with TUSLA and Bernard Gloucester, who I know has always shown leadership on issues and is extremely reform-minded, and I'm happy to continue to engage with the Deputy on the issue as well.